Martin.
You know where he lives?
Well, sure I know where he lives. He lives in Bailey Park.
You sure this is Bailey Park?
No, I'm not sure of anything anymore. All I know is this should be Bailey Park. But where are the houses?
You went here to build them. Your brother, Harry Bailey, broke through the ice and was drowned at the age of 9.
That's a lie. Harry Bailey went to war. He got the Congressional Medal of Honor. He saved the lives of every man on that transport.
Every man on that transport died. Harry wasn't there to save them because you weren't there to save Harry. You see, George, you really had a wonderful life. Don't you see what a mistake it would be to throw it away?
Take it, yeah, that's good. We see throughout the movie that George's life, had he never lived, would have impacted so many people. He saved his brother's life when he was 10 years old by crawling out on the ice that his brother had fallen through and pulled his brother back in. His brother was responsible for the lives, saving the lives of about 20 men in the military and receiving so many awards, but his brother would have died had George not been alive. So many other things happened that you see throughout the movie, the influence that George made on the town. That cemetery that we see there was actually a thriving community with buildings that had been built by his savings and loan business. Hundreds of people with homes and clothing placed because he was alive. And all of a sudden to discover that if he hadn't been alive, the difference that would have been made for, you know, the negative. And it began to make me think about the Christmas story and asking the question, what would our lives look like? I don't want to actually think about this, but I was forced to think about it for the message this morning. What our lives would look like had Jesus never been born. What if the first Christmas with Mary and Joseph never happened? I mean, we assume, period, that it always would have. But what if it didn't? No virgin birth, no baby Jesus wrapped in swaddling clothes, no shepherds receiving this wonderful angels singing, sending them to this stable, no wise men making this long trek with frankincense and myrrh and gold. And what kind of impact has Jesus made over the last 2,000 years? And more specifically, what kind of impact has Jesus made in our lives? And are our lives different because Jesus was born? Well, the answer is obviously yes, but I want you to get out of your routine, out of your yes mode, and think about it with me out loud this morning. I want you to ask yourself the question this week, on a daily basis, as you shop, as you walk, as you talk, as you go to prayer meetings, whatever it is you do in your small groups, what would your life be like? What would society be like? What would the malls be like this time of year had Jesus never been? Would we still have Santa Claus anyways? I mean, what's Santa Claus's major line? Ho, 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 Merry. What would he say? Ho, 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 Merry Sanimus? I don't know. If Christ hadn't been born. Jesus has made an incredible impact around the world. There are approximately 2 billion Christians on this planet right now. 2B with a capital, illion Christians. No Christmas means we certainly aren't here today. No Christmas means I don't have a job, at least not this one. If I were to take you back the last 2,000 years and demonstrate the difference that Christ has made, here are 3 of the roughly 2,000 to 4,000 differences that Christ has made. Poverty, world poverty, it still exists, but it has been stemmed because of so many different Christian organizations that have made an impact. The Christian faith has held off the moral decay of so many nations. In North America, the first hospitals and the first schools were founded by Christians. St. Boniface. How many hospitals and schools do you know the first statement in it was Saint? Boom. That's just a couple out of thousands. Jesus' disciple John, who we heard from this morning, seemed to think that Christmas was a big deal and that Jesus made a difference too. Much greater difference than George Bailey, by the way. So let's take a look at 3 things John believed we would never have known or experienced if Jesus had been born. If Jesus had never been born, we wouldn't know exactly what God is like. Next slide. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word, Jesus Christ, became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory. We have seen the glory of the one and only who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. We have seen God because we have seen Christ. And we would have no idea. We would be guessing what God is truly like if Christ had not been born. One of the most amazing truths that has ever happened is that God came here to earth and became one of us, the Son of God, who we know as Jesus. Next slide. Billy Graham said, if I want to know what God is like, I look at Jesus. Jesus is God's HD TV. Okay? We look at it and we see a clear picture of what God is like. In Jesus' day, Jews didn't even believe there was, in Jesus' day, non-Jews didn't even believe that there was one God. Many people believed in multiple gods who were simply more powerful versions of themselves. And that these gods were prideful, deceitful, full of lust and vengeful. And it's pretty sad, if you think about it, if your god or goddess is morally just as messed up as you are. It's pretty sad if your god or goddess is going to line up at a Black Friday event and try and trample the other god or goddess to get the food processor that you want. Today there are some pretty messed up claims as well about who God is. Some people believe that they're God, that I'm God, that you're God. You know, a God here and a God there, here a God, there a God, everywhere a God. And that's some messed up old McDonald's God farm right there. People who are into Star Wars think that God is a force or an energy. Some friends of mine who are Christians have begun to incorporate their Star Wars idea of who God is into their idea of who God is. Well, God's not a force or an energy. He's God. Pure and simple. Maybe you have an image of God that he's judgmental, waiting for you to mess up so he can, bam, punish you. Or maybe you think God is like Santa Claus, just waiting to give you a gift. You know, just pray and God will do anything you need for him to do as long as you've been a good boy and a good girl and put out cookies and milk for him. Maybe God's your gentle grandma or grandpa who loves everybody and doesn't really care what they do. Maybe God is some remote being out there in the universe who doesn't really care. There are a lot of images people have about God. But the Christmas story reminds us that we don't have to wonder about what God is like, what God looks like, because the Bible says Jesus came in the flesh. Jesus himself even said this: Christ is the visible image of the invisible God. And Jesus said this. Next slide. Anyone who, say this with me, anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. Say it louder. Anyone who has seen me has seen the... That's Jesus who said that. Now, I can get up in front of you and go, anyone who has seen my son Benjamin, kind of seems